What's going on, guys, and welcome back to the Gould's Gaming and Tech channel. Today we are playing the Forspoken demo. So this video is just going to be a best visual, settings video, just because this game looks pretty good. So I want to give you guys the best tools to get the most out of what you're looking at, basically. But before we get into that, if you're new to the channel, make sure to hit that subscribe button, and if you're new or returning, make sure to hit that like button. It's definitely appreciated. We're going to be doing like a little walkthrough of this demo anyway on the channel, but this, like I said, is just for the settings. So I'm going to scroll down to the settings right here, and if you see at the bottom of the screen, you can go to display settings. Text, if there's going to be subtitles, you want them in English. Voice language, well, you don't want them in English, we put them in whatever you want to. But voice language, English. So this is where the juicy bits come into play. Display settings, you have image quality settings. So I don't know if you guys used ray tracing before. I think it's really good, a really good feature. More examples of that is in the Spider-Man games. They introduced the ray tracing. I think it's in Horizon games, but I'm not sure. But it's definitely in the Spider-Man games. But anyway, as you can see right here, it says quality focus, standard setting that focuses on achieving a stable frame rate of 4K. Ray tracing enables ray tracing, offering beautiful, graphically enhanced visuals. That's the setting that I would recommend. And then performance focus, it lowers the resolution in order to achieve a higher frame rate. From what I've noticed from playing around with this game so far, you won't really have issues with frame rate, so I don't really see you needing to use performance focus. But you can if you want, but my recommendation is ray tracing because it makes the game look really good. It's not an online service, not a live service, so the frame rate doesn't really come into play that much. But with ray tracing, I think that's like the best of both worlds. So I would say ray tracing for that image quality, the UI brightness and HDR. So if you change this, it says adjust the brightness of the user interface when HDR is enabled. So I would leave this UI HDR brightness at 0.8. If you adjust it, again, this is to your visual settings, but these are my best recommended settings. The brightness, I found that 1.0 is fine. There weren't parts in the game where it looked a little darker or a little lighter than it should. So I would leave that at 1.0. The gamma settings. This says adjust the contrast of your display. So this game is predominantly taking place outside. There's a lot of nature going on. The contrast, for what it's already preset to, the grass looks how the grass should be. It's green, but there are some flowers and stuff here and there that kind of are washed out a little bit. So I would say as far as your gamma settings, believe it or not, changing this to 1.1 makes a massive difference. So I would say put that on 1.1. 1.0 isn't bad, but again, like I said, some of the stuff looks a little bit washed out, the lower the number you get. So I would say put that on 1.1. If you do have a display that grants you 120 Hertz, I would highly recommend you put that on. It just creates a very smooth experience. And it says 120 Hertz display mode, enables 120 Hertz refresh rate and lowers input lag if your system settings are currently set to enable 120 Hertz output. Like I said, with the ray tracing giving you that visual fidelity that you want, this 120 Hertz definitely helps with making sure the experience is smooth. Like I said, you won't really have issues with that frame rate, but if your display doesn't allow for 120 Hertz, then you won't have this option. Motion blur, she does a lot of quick movements, and it can get a little mind-boggling at times because there's a lot of stuff going on outside. So I would say to leave this motion blur on because it'll get a little nauseous because the traversal is very big in this game, very prominent. It will get a little bit hectic when she's constantly moving left and right. It kind of makes more sense for her constantly being in movement, having that motion blur on, because it's a little bit visually appealing and you won't be paying attention to those side elements as far as what's around her when she's moving. So I would say leave motion blur on. Those are the best visual settings for this game. And if you want to go to gameplay over here, I know this might be tempting to auto evade because there's a lot of stuff here, but you could be mid fight or mid move, and if some enemy's creeping up behind you, she's gonna auto evade, which will kind of throw off your input. So I would say leave that off, because you don't want to have those issues where you're like, man, I'm pressing this button and now she's evading. So it'll interrupt your move patterns, you know, sometimes. And automatic support spell switching. So again, as you can see in the prompt, when this is on, you'll automatically switch to support spells that aren't currently subject to cooldown. That's not necessarily important, because once you get used to the game, you'll kind of know what spells you need, and then you can also scan the enemy, kind of like a feature in Horizon. You can see the strengths and weaknesses of it. So the cooldown is not too long. I've noticed that if you keep, you know, striking enemies around you, it, you know, bounces back pretty quick. So you won't necessarily need that. Damage received, default, stamina recovery speed. Obviously, why wouldn't you not want that on fast? And automatically use healing items. Leave that on. Trust me, it definitely comes into play. There's one area that I got to in the game where I was surrounded by like these crocodile type things, and my health got seriously low. I was so worried about combat and defeating them, and I just noticed I automatically heal. I'm like, oh crap, that's a good feature. Instead of thinking about, oh man, I need to heal now, it does it automatically. And then these wireless controller settings, leave these default. These are your basic functions of how to use the game, or how to, like, you know, fight. So, or to use the spells. So unless I would say only change this if there's one particular move that you're used to pressing a certain button in another game that you don't really that you don't really like how it's mapped on this game. So for example, evade. Most games evade is between square and circle, but most games I play, evade is circle. So I would use circle for evade. But that's pretty much evade and traversal on this game. So if yours is different, you can adjust that with this mapping feature for your wireless controller. But that's the only thing that I saw that, you know, would stand out to me in most games, is that evade feature. Again, these are my recommended best settings for this game. Yours could be a little bit different, but I think these, the ones I recommended, they'll give you the best experience playing this game. But thank you guys for tuning in. I really appreciate it, and I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.